Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel today. Thank you very much for the warm invitation and introduction to join all of you. My name is Pamela Fuertes, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as Dean of the School of Global Business, Trade, and Transportation at Miami-Dade College. I would like to acknowledge Nicholas Remillard, President of the World Strategic Forum, members of the Board of the World Strategic Forum, members of the Consular Corps that I see in the audience, to our panelists, of course, and a very special greeting to Miami-Dade College alumni community members that I see in the audience as well. I'd also like to recognize dear colleagues and friends of our international business community of Miami. I would like to really congratulate the World Strategic Forum for its 13th edition. I remember when this conference started in Miami, and it's wonderful to see its commitment to our community and bringing us all together for this important program. There's no need to stress how closely related Miami-Dade College is to our community. I bring you the best regards and deep appreciation of our president, Miami-Dade College President Madeline Pumariega, as well as of our provost, Dr. Malu Harrison. I'm also here on behalf of our Miami-Dade College students and faculty who are hard at work this week on final exams as it's the end of our academic semester. On the topic of transformation, leading transformation at scale is something that is in our DNA at Miami-Dade College. And as President Pumariega reminds us, we are democracy's college. The diversity that lives and gives life to our campuses across our community is a symbol of the democracy that we build and promote every day. Today, Miami-Dade College serves 125,000 students from more than 117 nations. With a vision for innovation and growth, our School of Global Business is firmly committed to the future and to provide the opportunity of higher education to every member of our community. This charge requires that we operate in a constant state of transformation and evolution to ensure that we remain and keep evolving as a dynamic, innovative, agile institution. We believe that there is no more fascinating, vibrant, future-facing community than ours, which so many of us here are fortunate to call home. We have a legacy of generations that share histories in common and a desire to keep growing and prospering. And that prosperity comes our institution. On the topic of transformations, we're undergoing one under the leadership of President Pumariega. We've recently instituted an artificial intelligence center, business innovation technology centers, and we've set forth a vision for student success and access, requiring a commitment to academic excellence and agility. We're firmly also committed to innovation. We have a President's Leadership Innovation Fund, which is designated for our faculty to take on new projects, research projects designed to help understand what the impact of this digital transformation represents for our community. At Miami-Dade College, we're also actively helping students embrace digital transformation through the various initiatives and programs that we offer. One of the key components is at our Business Innovation Technology Center, which serves as a hub for exploring and cultivating the role of real-time technologies in digital transformation, process automation, and business analytics. The BIT Center offers real-world competitive advantage by providing an advanced curriculum focused on today's discussion. I'm also proud to say that we're also the first academic institution in the state of Florida to offer a bachelor's degree in artificial intelligence. As today, artificial intelligence is embraced as a tool across all of our disciplines. Additionally, we have more programs and degrees embedded with industry certifications to help our students understand the power they have as leaders to embrace digital transformation. These efforts demonstrate Miami-Dade College's commitment to helping our students and our community understand the power that lies within. As most digital transformations we see, digital transformations don't come easily. In today's panel, we'll hear so much about the geopolitics aspect of digital transformation. But I can tell you that we look at this very carefully and very thoughtfully, and our commitment stands to making this a successful opportunity for our community at large. While digital transformation has been at the top of corporate agendas for at least a decade, and of course, based on what we see, there's no signs of slowing down, we're very, very enthusiastic and optimistic about the opportunities that digital transformation and evolving programs having to do with artificial intelligence, blockchain, and others offer. With that, these collective actions for us are a commitment to our community, commitment as an academic institution, and I know that today's panel will offer us really wonderful insight that I'm personally very, very interested in hearing more about. So with that, please join me in welcoming our panel, and thank you for your attention today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Thanks to the World Strategic Forum for inviting us and for this initiative. I'm Dan Korn, America's Director of AI Governance and Partnerships at Microsoft. Joining me on the stage today are Nick Hill, who is a Director of Intelligence Services at Crisis 24, providing risk management and intelligence solutions. Nick previously served in the Marine Corps, overseeing strategic intelligence analysis and production. Nadia Pabst, who is the VP Government and Regulatory Affairs at IEFA Power, a Blackstone portfolio company, which builds, owns, and operates energy infrastructure for the North American grid. Nadia previously worked at Florida Power and Light and a General Motors self-driving car company. And Kombis Abdolrahimi, who is the VP and Global Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy at ServiceNow, which implements AI for organizations in every industry. Kombis also serves as the AI and Advanced Technology columnist for Homeland Security Today and is a member of the OECD's AI Policy Observatory. We all recognize that AI is the next great general purpose technology. What do we mean by general purpose technology, which coincidentally can be abbreviated as GPT? This is a technology like electricity, like the steam engine, like the computer, that has the potential to touch every aspect of the economy. US companies are investing, innovating, and developing great AI products each day, making the US the global leader on AI. In his new book, Technology and the Rise of the Great Powers, Professor Jeffrey Ding concludes that the most important determinant of a country's economic growth and productivity around a new GPT is not innovation per se, but whether that country diffuses that GPT across its entire economy. So before World War I, the Germans had innovated some of the biggest breakthroughs in chemistry. But it was the Americans that widened our base of skills associated with that GPT that allowed those innovations to be practically applied in every sector of the American economy, from manufacturing to medicine to steel production to oil and gas. Germany is the birthplace of chemical innovation, but the United States is the birthplace of chemical engineering that develops specific applications of the GPT to sectors across the economy. Diffusion of a GPT like AI depends on many factors. Skilling is certainly one. Good governance and safety is another. And infrastructure investment around the world. US companies can invest in infrastructure at scale, partnering with allied governments. Microsoft is investing over $20 billion a quarter on the digital infrastructure that powers AI and cloud computing, and so are many other US companies. So with that as a frame, let's turn to our panelists and dive into discussion. Nick, how is AI impacting geopolitics?
That's a big question, Dan. In my role in Crisis 24, our mission is to empower organizations, brands, and individuals to navigate an uncertain world with confidence. It's about navigating security, ensuring life safety, protecting assets, but it's also about empowering executives to make faster, more informed decisions in an opaque information environment. And so what I'd like to do is start us off by setting the scene. Where do we see emerging technology, specifically AI with LLMs, disrupting geopolitics? And then where do we see geopolitics in AI moving forward? I want to start with a look back in 2024. It was an election super cycle. Over 3.7 billion eligible voters in over 60 countries engaged in elections. And there was much concern going into the year that after what we saw, particularly from Russia influence in elections in 2016 and 2020 here in the US, but also globally, that we're going to see an emergence of deepfake content, disinformation that would be truly disruptive to elections. While there were isolated incidents of that, what we really saw was the content production, processing, and dissemination at speed and scale never seen before. And this has a tremendous impact, not just on nation-state alliances and relationships as actors like Russia and China and others, maybe even the United States, see an opportunity to leverage information operations to influence economic engagements, investments, as well as the traditional geopolitics. But we also see how it can empower individuals and organizations at the grassroots level to push information and to organize at speed and scale not seen before. And we're seeing the impacts of that. And so I will spend a little bit of time today talking about information operations, particularly from nation-state actors. What does that mean for national security globally, and what impact might that have on companies? Looking forward over the next 5 years, there's two other elements that I want to call out. The first is that national economies are going to invest in the critical infrastructure necessary to see digital transformation. That critical infrastructure is a national security priority and represents new vulnerabilities that nation-state actors are seeking to take advantage of. Everything from our data centers, fiber optic cables, and cloud computing. As we think about disruptive technology, our fundamental civil services are going to be in the cloud, optimizing through AI. That is fantastic. That's a beautiful future, but it makes us incredibly vulnerable to manipulation from individuals and organizations and even nation states that can do so while remaining relatively anonymous. And so that's important consideration. My second key takeaway for the future is that these disruptive technologies, whether it's AI, quantum computing, semiconductor manufacturing, are all very resource intensive. They require an incredible amount of power. And so as Dan mentioned, we think about AI as a general purpose technology diffused across an economy. Every country is need to think critically about investing in their power grid, their sources of energy, the data center footprint. So the key takeaway here is that the infrastructure needed to deliver disruptive technology is in itself disruptive. It will further complicate the fabrics of society. Where you decide to put data centers, maybe it disenfranchises certain communities, right? The resource competition becomes very intense. And one thing we know about electric power is it's not transferable globally. It can't be distributed globally. And so as countries invest in that critical infrastructure and compete for resources, that's going to have a geopolitical impact in the long term.
What a great overview, Nick. Thank you. Nadia, starting with Nick's focus on the energy needed to power AI, can you give us a snapshot of the power infrastructure today and what are AI's requirements?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this question. So for years, the investments of the global economy, and certainly that of the United States, has really centered around two key areas. The first of which is around digitalization. So areas such as AI, smart cities, autonomous vehicles, and the second one really being around the energy transition itself. So as we look to 2025, what we see is a very fantastic and exciting marriage of these two historically distinct sectors. And here's why. The power that's required to enable the data center of tomorrow is absolutely flooring. And the sector's ability to secure access to that power is absolutely its number one existential threat. So for perspective, for the last 2 decades or so, the United States has experienced relatively flat load growth, largely driven by gains in energy efficiency. But a recent report highlighted that data center load growth today will increase from 60 gigawatts to an astounding 171 gigawatts by 2028 and 298 gigawatts by 2030. That's all in just 5 short years. Never mind the fact that your average energy project that's trying to get onto the grid is sitting in the interconnection queue for roughly 3 to 7 years, again, just to get online and provide electricity. And so as we look to data centers and where they're prioritizing, we see historically data centers that are 50 to 100 megawatts in size really accelerating towards areas that have proximity to population centers, access to water for cooling, access to workforce, and access to fiber optic networks. You see hyperscalers today kind of saying, we can deprioritize that because really what's fundamental to our success is access to power and ultimately decent infrastructure to enable that access.
Wow, a little scary. But innovation comes to the rescue. So what does innovation look like in this space?
In this space, I love talking about this because I generally categorize regulatory innovation as an oxymoron, because innovation is quick, regulation is slow. And when we're talking about energy, we're talking about one of the highest regulated sectors in the world. If you're looking at the US alone, depending on where and what you're advancing, you're being regulated at the federal level by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. You have regulators at the state level, largely at the Public Utilities Commission. Then you have the regional markets, such as your ISOs and the RTOs. And then when you get in the localized level, that's where real problems arise. And you kind of touched on this a little bit. Permitting is absolutely the secondary existential threat, I think, to data centers. So regulation will play absolutely an important role as we see hyperscalers move into this next role in our society. Regulations have the ability to either limit or enhance the scale at which we're seeing this future. And so where I see innovation really happening from my lens, again, in the regulatory space, is the type of technologies that will enable that energy transition and certainly the data center and hyperscaler transition. We're going to see a focus on nuclear, and we'll touch on this throughout the course of this conversation. Nuclear, natural gas, what are the technologies advancing? And ultimately, what are the regulatory reforms that enable certain technologies, market-ready, cost-competitive solutions to really skip that 3 to 7 year interconnection queue that I was talking about earlier to meet the immediacy of this mandate?
Terrific. Combis, before we get more deeply in the issue of regulation that Nadia raised, why don't we take a step back, and if you could give us, sort of set the table with the benefits of AI, for example, those that empower people who want to make more informed decisions faster, who want to be more creative. Give us a sense of, what AI is enabling people to do now.
Yeah, no, happy to. And thank you all for having us here today. Yeah, I mean, I see AI as sort of an enhancement of productivity for us, for the workforce. AI is just earth-changing technology, really a game changer for delivering the priorities of efficiency, of accountability, of better service, more customized service, values that I think all of us in the room here can appreciate. I mean, at its core, AI empowers individuals, organizations, to make faster, more informed decisions, and to spend less time, frankly, to save time on the more routine, mind-numbing tasks. It's not here to replace humans, it's to augment humans, it's to augment the workforce so we can have a more productive, a more creative workforce. I don't know how many in the room, by a show of hands, have used sort of the ChatGPTs, the Microsoft Copilots. I mean, it's a great tool. It's a resource. It's not replacing us. Again, it's providing something where we hadn't thought of. I mean, if you throw in, I'm looking for some, ideas on smart cities and how I can, and it throws out, content. And you look at it and you determine, okay, that makes sense. That could work. That one is not. So I really see it as kind of this value add, if you will, but not like a replacement of us and our society and our culture and who we are. And I'm also one of so I lead government affairs for a technology company, for a software company, ServiceNow, but I also am an attorney as well. And so I've used all of these sort of open source models on how to better provide insights to my clients, and really again provide that sort of customize service that I think AI can really help all of society in. And yeah, I mean the benefits, again, in addition to sort of the efficiency and the productivity, just even using AI in healthcare, predicting. I mean, that's kind of the future. All of these sort of scans and like sort of the checkups that we do, getting a better sense of, you're based on kind of history, you're at risk of these things, and you should, take measures now to prevent that from happening. So it's just remarkable applications across all industries, governments, which I think we'll get to in the conversation today.
Excellent. As they say, AI may not be coming for your job, but someone who uses AI may. So that's, I think,
Yes.
a summary to what you just presented.
Yeah.
Nadia, going back to regulation and making sure that we don't block the growth of all of this goodness, what would you say governments can do to position themselves to ensure policies and investments drive the development of AI infrastructure?
Thank you, Dan. I really love this question because I've been in tech off and on for the last 15 years. And historically, what our paradigm has been in the tech space is innovation moves quickly again, regulations move slowly. Therefore, I, as an innovator, get to leapfrog regulation and allow regulations to keep up with the speed of innovation. And the challenge that we have here specifically for data centers and hyperscalers and AI writ large is that that's just not an option available to us. The area is too complex, it's too far reaching, it's moving absolutely too quickly, and it's too novel such that regulators in and of themselves generally don't know how to wrap their heads around, again, the complexity of the pace and the scale of what we're advancing here. So regulators, specifically in the energy space, are really balancing this complex ecosystem that really focuses really on the protections of your everyday citizens. So as we're advancing these big energy users that are now, again, 1 gigawatt in size on average, if you build prospectively for this as a utility, that's just something that they're not accustomed to doing. And ultimately, if they're building, again, prospectively for a data center that may move into the market in 3 years, they're putting billions of dollars, ratepayer dollars, into that infrastructure. What happens when that data center decides, you know what, I was going to build in Ohio because the regulatory and the policy landscape was so favorable, but Pennsylvania just told me they're going to give me a really great tax abatement if I move to that market. And data centers have the ability to kind of jump from market to market based on the incentives that are available to them, but utilities and the protectors, if you will, of ratepayers have to build that and share that cost onto ratepayers. And so what we're seeing around innovation in this space in particular are solutions that really drive what I hope to be a really fair balance on cost sharing and how ultimately the burdens, if you will, of these new technologies get spread out at parity. So, for instance, there are regulations advancing in Indiana today that are really focusing on how data centers in and of themselves can carry a majority of that cost. But if data centers or the industry carry the entirety of the cost and advanced technologies, energy technologies in particular, that only benefit themselves, then the investments here are not being spread across all the energy users. And when we're building out new transmission lines and grid infrastructure, I think it's absolutely imperative that I, as an energy user, get to benefit from that. And so much so that I saw a recent big U.S. utility in this space talk about if we allow data centers to build, own, and operate the entirety of the energy infrastructure, you're going to see upwards of $214 increase on your monthly electricity bill. And that doesn't take into account everything that's going on with transmission and distribution build-outs for the renewable energy space and the energy transition. So when you look to something, again, like Indiana and the utility settlement that they're advancing there between data centers, regulators and utilities, it focuses on cost parity and cost sharing. What does clean air and energy tariffs look like, such that, again, we can see enablement of the energy transition and clean technologies. It talks about annual community contributions, such that, again, data centers are giving back to the communities that they're using the lands and the infrastructure to advance these technologies, and allowing all this to come together to deliver things quickly. So in short, if governments want to play a role in this space, because they cannot be leapfrogged, the real solution is around collaboration, discussion, and solutions.
Brilliant. Combis, in terms of Naja's point about competition among states on the regulatory front, are you seeing arbitrage of regulations, so to speak, between sort of federal and global regulations? Are there regulations that are blocking the development of AI infrastructure?
No, great question. I want to say to Nadia's point, so she says, innovation moves really fast and regulation moves really slow. And that's a great point, I think, for our conversation today. There's no shortage of regulations at the federal level, at the state level. I mean, you've got 50 states, you've got the federal regulatory agencies, you have global regulations as well, which impact, how we do business here in the US. So again, there's no shortage of regulations. There's this saying, I think I'd mentioned it before this talk, that I think really gets to kind of the heart of this is, and again, this conversation being sort of, and this forum being more about geopolitical, as China replicates, Europe regulates, America innovates. And I think for us, this is a pivotal moment in our history, especially when it comes to AI, that we can lead globally in AI governance with a balanced approach, that promotes innovation, provides clarity, provides consistency, to ensure global competitiveness. So what do I mean by that? At its core, the focus should be on the activity, not the technology that's being regulated. So as you use the technology, use these platforms for engaging in riskier, consumer-facing activity, the regulation should mirror that level of risk, and vice versa. If you're using it for less riskier activity, then it should be at that level. So it is, companies like ours, we rely on a regulatory environment that, fosters innovation, that allows us to deliver solutions, that empowers our customers, organizations, and the capability for our customers. But if we over-regulate and create barriers for companies to expand across state lines, across the US, and then globally, we risk stifling the very innovation that has made the US this global leader in technology. So we want regulation, but it needs to strike that right balance. Again, clarity on the rules, consistency in the application of those rules is absolutely critical so everybody understands the rules of the road. When we're looking at all of these, regulations out of Europe, the UAI Act, the implications for US businesses doing business there's some good things, there's some complex things, and it's more about the clarity and the consistency that I think the regulators can do a better job of engaging with industry that is, as Nadia mentioned, innovation is moving fast. The private sector is the ones that are driving that innovation forward. Government has a role to play in setting those rules of the road, but it needs to be a partnership and a collaboration, not a, I don't know why I'm thinking of like gotcha, but like kind of a more of a lack of understanding, and then let's just throw on some regulations. Then companies are going to go elsewhere to other jurisdictions where it's easier to do business. And we don't want to lose that competitive edge that we have, and that we hope to have in the future, by being too onerous with our regulations. But again, we're not saying there should be no regulations, and because we need to have consumer protections. Consumers need to be protected, businesses, users, but we need to have that balanced approach. And I think that's what's missing, but hopefully we will get there.
As they say, the AI era in the EU is creating more lawyers, while the AI era in the United States is creating more engineers.
Yeah.
Right?
And if I can jump in real
Sure.
quickly on what Kambiz just shared, I think when we think about regulation writ large, two areas really come to mind. And I think we have to fundamentally solve for these two things if we intend to see, again, the accelerated deployment of AI across the United States and certainly globally. Number one is patchwork regulations. As you move from market to market, municipality to municipality, government to government, and then internationally, what does it look like in order to enable these technologies? Because ultimately, if you're conforming to really restrictive or stringent regulations in one municipality or in one market such as the US, but you're able to do so with greater ease internationally, you're going to see the sector really flock there. And what does that mean from a global competitive standpoint for the United States, but ultimately for any country competing? And then the second area that I think you really spoke to rather indirectly, but ultimately I think gets to the same point, is that regulations writ large largely result in unintended consequences. So what is the right balance for regulators to come into this space and effectively say, here's enough guidance for you to, again, accelerate quickly and render the benefits that Dan was talking to earlier today, that, the economies of scale, if you will, but ultimately not doing so in a way that, you hit a certain milestone and you go, oh, wait, I didn't realize that I was going to adversely impact this other critical area of my ecosystem because I did not account for that, again, unintended consequence of regulation.
Very good. Kambiz, let's pivot to workforce development on AI, since skilling is key to the broad diffusion of a general purpose technology. How do you see this trend evolving?
Yeah, I mean, another great question. Because again, you have this technology, wonderful benefits, but you got to be able to use it. And how are you going to be able to use it? And you may have to, train, retrain, equip, people with those skills to be able to use these general purpose technologies effectively. I think we'll hear throughout this forum the importance, again, we've talked about it now, sort of our competitiveness, but workforce development, like the workforce is the essential ingredient to this. If you don't have a workforce that can use these tools and technologies, we can't be competitively on a global stage. So that skills gap presents both a challenge, but also an opportunity for us to remain the global leader in AI and in innovation. So at my company, at ServiceNow, we've seen how upskilling our own workers in AI can drive efficiency and reduce costs. We have a number of programs that we use in-house to train our employees to use AI-driven tools. And then we work with a lot of academic universities. We have a lot of partnerships with colleges and universities across the country, and frankly, even globally. We run a cybersecurity program, a master's in cybersecurity program in the EU that's sponsored by the European Parliament, European Commission. And we basically provide all of our technology and train the students and the workforce on our platform. And I think, what's needed is a commitment, maybe a national commitment to sort of this concept of AI literacy, but like rooted in these partnerships between government and industry. Because I think we have an opportunity to really expand on successful initiatives like AI apprenticeships, like a program that they have at Miami Dade College, and first bachelor in AI in the country. I mean, that's incredible. Which really equip our next generation, but also our current workforce who may not want to go to school. I mean, go back to school and learn these things. So it's like apprenticeships. It's equipping workers with the skills to use these technologies effectively. I mean, globally, we're seeing a lot of partnerships at the government level with private sector and universities to really train and equip current workforce, future workforce in these skills. But I think there needs to be more. And I think it is through these apprenticeships and other kinds of programs that enable current workers to just, again, I mean, we saw the raise of hands, which was a lot of you using AI now. And so it's just providing additional tools, additional resources that I think all of us on stage here, Microsoft has phenomenal programs, our companies that provide to the public at large. But I think, there really needs to be more of an emphasis in that sort of, I wouldn't say tech fluency, but more about the literacy aspect of AI, how to use these technologies. And I think we're getting there with even more sort of these game-changing apps that just make it a lot easier to use. I don't know how many of you have like Samsung. So I have one of my phones. I got too many phones. One of my phones is Samsung what is it? One of those fold or whatever, flip fold phones. But it comes with it AI, and it has like the ability to, take down notes. If you're like recording like for meetings, transcribing it, summarizing it, giving you a next like action steps, next steps. So these are really productive tools that I think can really help people in their day-to-day jobs. So it's not, you don't need to like go back to school to learn AI and be an engineer, but it's just more how to get literate in this sort of technology. And that's really is what's going to propel us and sort of workforce forward.
I want to echo your shout out to Miami-Dade College and to Pamela. In the face of the Microsoft Work Trend Index, you just reminded me that found that 55% of executives are actually worried they can't fill open roles. So it's great to see Miami-Dade College being a first mover to help fill that AI skills training deficit. Nick, how do you think about automated work?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic discussion so far. Where Crisis 24 likes to play with the AI is on the application side. I think it's really important that we inspire our organizations to play in a sandbox, to see what are those responsible applications that is going to fuel the adoption of AI across an economy and within our specific sector. So Crisis 24 is still very focused on delivering verified information to our clients. We have the largest private sector team of intelligence analysts with over 200 analysts. But what our clients tell us is that we are successfully helping them navigate the world with confidence, maintaining situational awareness, but there's still too much going on. The risks are diverse, frequent, complex, and so we need an enabler. And so what we like to say is that while we talk a lot about AI being a superpower for the bad guys, it's a superpower for the good guys. And if it wasn't for AI, we would lose that battle. And so Crisis 24 is focused on what does it mean to bring together man and machine. We have the deep expertise globally, and now we're empowering that team with AI applications. The first way that we've been doing that is around our intelligence detection and analysis. And so I'll give you an example. We were supporting clients in Haiti earlier this year, and we monitor for incidents around Haiti, like shootings, gang violence, protests, and we have a general baseline. And so by collecting large amounts of information, we're able to identify what that baseline is, and it's about 20 to 25 incidents per day. And then suddenly our AI lets us know that there's a spike to over 100 incidents a day. That suggests a shift, and our analysts were able to work with on-the-ground information to determine that the airport was going to close, even though if you Googled flights at that time, it showed all flights as being on regular schedule and on time. And so because we're able to forecast the closure of that airport, we're able to proactively get our people out. And it wasn't for AI, we wouldn't have been able to navigate the complex information environment in Haiti at that time. So it's about situational awareness through AI applications. Where I'm most excited about the future and workflow innovation is with agentic AI around the autonomous processing of highly specified, specialized data. And so what our clients have also told us is that we really need help triaging and escalating information to make better decisions at scale. And so it's not enough for our analysts to maintain situational awareness around the world. We have to help our clients make decisions and understand what's most important for them to know in that moment. And so we're exploring AI applications to do that curation of information, identify who needs to know, and making sure that we're communicating that information in a timely manner. With all of that, I have analysts that come to me and ask, is AI coming for my job? What we've struggled with as an industry, I like to call is the tyranny of crisis intelligence. There's so much going on that we have challenges breaking out of that structure to provide deeper analysis, forecasting where we might see risks in the future, helping our clients see around the corner. The beauty of AI is not that it's going to replace the analysts, it's that we can optimize the workflows around crisis intelligence, getting critical information to clients at the right time and in the right way, so that we can do other work that provides deeper value. And so my challenge to our industry, and I think to the broader economy, is rather than worrying about job replacements, focusing on value creation. And if we can adopt AI models that are specific to our industry with specialized data and optimize around that, then that frees up capacity to innovate, do something new, be creative, be inspired. And that is going to create its own job. It can create its own industry. So that's very exciting for us and where we've been leveraging AI applications.
I love it. Nadia, from your perspective, some thoughts?
Yeah, so I've had the great fortune of actually being on both sides of this issue. So on one hat, if you will, having served as a head of U.S. state and local government relations for Cruise Automation, which is General Motors' self-driving car company, we were standing in the process of delivering new regulations, just as taxi cab drivers in New York City were committing suicide on the steps of the municipality because they were losing their jobs in the crisis, if you will, of automation and self-driving cars. You also have the drivers unions for heavy duty trucks really leveraging in on this space and really saying we need to protect our jobs in order to, put food on the table. We're a fantastic part of the U.S. workforce. And what are we going to do as it relates to reskilling and finding new jobs in the wake of AI deployment, again, around self-driving technology? On the other end, I've also been a political appointee that focuses on a just transition. What does it mean specifically in the energy space to support and enable the jobs of tomorrow and the policies that are absolutely critical to see that healthy balance? And I think when it comes to any new disruptive technology, and specifically around automation, we have fundamental questions that we have to answer around the human side and the workforce side. And ultimately, again, that fundamental question of what do I, as an everyday American, as an everyday citizen in any country, frankly, what do I need to do to ensure that I can continue to put food on the table, keep my lights on for my family? And every automation revolution has had these critical questions to grapple with. What does workforce training look like? What do new sectors and innovations that allow us to say that you're not losing your job, but ultimately we're creating new jobs and new spaces that the training that you have to date, you are already capable and enabled to have a smooth transition to? And ultimately, what does reskilling look like? And the policies that all bring this all together. So I say all of this because I think having stood on both sides of this very important, critical question in the context of AI, innovation, and the acceleration thereof, is that this is absolutely not a new question for us as citizens. It's absolutely a new frontier, and I have full confidence in our ability to find the right solutions and the right balance such that we can actually prevail through this one and then get to the next complicated questions on, is my job safe?
Very good. Nick, going back to the issue you raised of disinformation, let's drill down there a little bit, in particular in its relationship to risk management. How should CEOs think about truth in a world of AI-delivered information?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I've alluded to information operations a few times, and I wanted to provide some color around that and then talk about how organizations can navigate this new world. We have seen Russia and other states engage in state-sponsored information operations globally. Even most recently in Romania, it's been alleged that Russian actors created over 25,000 TikTok accounts overnight, driving information related to Romanian elections. The key result of that is that the Romanian High Court dissolved the election results and called for a new election. And then they asked the European Union to do an investigation on foreign interference in elections and the role that technology had in that, not just TikTok, but other platforms. We've known since 2016 that nation-state actors are influencing both media and social media platforms. We also know that our world is becoming increasingly polarized. And that's not because of nation states. That's just the world that we live in. But nation states like Russia have recognized that if they can pull at the fabric of society by driving polarization further and erode trust and confidence in core process and institutions, that they can then influence the results. What's interesting about Romania is that it's our assessment at Crisis 24 that Russia isn't invested in seeing any particular candidate win. Although they have a preferred candidate, that's not their end goal. Their end goal is to erode trust and confidence in elections in Europe. And so by recalling the election, asking for a redo almost plays right into the hands of nation state actors that are trying to erode trust and confidence. We also see, though, the impact of information operations at the grassroots level. Crisis 24 this week will be publishing our 2024 global risk forecast. And the key theme we see is that narratives around conflict, whether it's in the Middle East, Ukraine, or elsewhere, are driven by narratives, really powerful on-the-ground stories that can be manipulated. They might be true, but they may be manipulated in how they're presented. And that can drive organizations, it can drive protest activity, it can drive security challenges on the ground, not just in conflict zones, but in everyday communities here in the US and abroad. With those grassroots movements, though, also comes that polarization. And so think about how do we protect our brand and help our executives navigate their organizations. Understanding what the narratives are, let's take what happened to the United Healthcare CEO this past week, right? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what I want to call out is that there are really powerful narratives in our society about what happened and why, and the motivations and the state of our healthcare. That impacts brands. That has impacted insurance companies' posture, their presence online, decisions they're making about policies. And so all this is driven by information. And then if we overlay that with the role of nation state actors being able to push information at speed and scale like never before, it becomes incredibly complex. I'll give you a simple example. In 2016, Russia is believed to be involved in an influence campaign in our election, but it was very focused and it wasn't fully scaled. And the reason is that because they didn't have large language models. And so everything had to go through actors in the US or their own operations in Russia. But today, with translation services in particular, you can push information that is culturally nuanced and translated all over the world. And so the ability to push narratives at scale has really made the information domain complex. So what do we do about it? It's my position that we have seen an evolution of truth or ground truth. Truthfully, information used to be a public service. That's how we got public radio and the National Weather Service. And you turned on the radio to hear the government tell you what was happening, and it was assumed to be fact. And then with the advent of the internet and certainly smartphones and social media, information became a commodity, which was really powerful because you can push the truth, journalist reporting, media reporting, down to individuals anywhere in the world so long as they had a phone and internet connection. And that led to the rise of the Arab Spring in 2011, other mass movements of people. The democratization of information has also changed how we process truth. Where we are going into the future is that truth is a product. My challenge to the audience and a discussion we've had as a panel is organizations need to have an investment strategy to gain clarity in the information space to make informed decisions. We support our clients in that every single day. It's critical to us to deliver verified information, the ground truth, but that has to be a strategy for all of us. What are our sources of truth, both as an organization, but as a country? It needs to be a national security priority to safeguard institutions and understand what our sources of truth are and how we navigate this future of information.
Terrific, Nick. Sounds like you'd agree that disinformation is one of the biggest threats to democracy then.
Yes, absolutely.
Nadia, let's turn to misinformation and how that affects policymaking in the regulatory space.
After your question to Nick, that really feels like a softball question for some reason. But ultimately, misinformation is really one of the existential threats, to your point, to the ways in which we're seeing growth in data centers and specifically around energy as well. And so the ways in which misinformation manifests itself in this space largely results in moratoria. And so we're seeing, upwards of 500 different moratoria specifically based on misinformation that prevails in the energy sector and getting critical energy infrastructure assets online quickly. But when we look to the misinformation that prevails in data centers, we're going to see a very similar trajectory. So I once heard a hyperscaler recently say that they will never site a data center or a hyperscale, those big 1 gigawatt size assets, near any kind of residential community. They have owned land, they have built out infrastructure, they have access to power in some of these spaces, and then they had a residential development sprout up after they had all their permitting, and the NIMBYism was so strong and the misinformation thereof was so prevailing that ultimately they decided to shut down the build out of that data center. And so when we look at that, the misinformation that we have today, we already have eight states that have a county or municipality that had already advanced a pause on data center development. And that ultimately ensures that we're going to see a decrease at our ability to, again, meet this moment for a sector that, again, is moving very, very quickly and that will ultimately render benefits across the entire economy. So I think when it comes to misinformation, what we're seeing today, again, is it sprouting out of moratorium, but the narrative that prevails there isn't really speaking to the benefits that will be realized across the board. And you opened up with this precisely. And Combis, you did a really fantastic job too. We're talking about everyday citizens having access to better information about healthcare, on financial planning. Is the news real or not real? What is deductive reasoning in spaces where I'm trying to make really important decisions in my everyday life? And if we can restructure the narrative to really focus on those key areas in a way that's comprehended at the very localized level, I think ultimately we're going to see policies and regulations that enable this space rather than the moratoria that we've seen, again, across 8 states in 2024. I've already heard states talking about moratorium, statewide moratoria in 2025 and 2026 onward. So we have to get ahead of this if we're going to scale.
And by moratoria, you're describing public holds on the continued development of data centers.
Yep. Exactly.
How's that for a soft question?
Exactly. So those moratoria effectively say that no data center will advance or the critical energy infrastructure necessary for it to advance will not be met.
As we come to the end of the panel, Nick, why don't you give us a general sense, of disruptive technologies generally, about the national security implications over the next 5 years. How do you see it?
Over the next 5 years, we'll have to continue to navigate changes in the information environment. We'll have to establish policy and make the right investments to address nation-state activity and disinformation, how to safeguard our institutions and our election process in the face of the emerging technology. I think more broadly, seeing the critical infrastructure necessary to deliver disruptive technologies must become a national security priority. Today, everything from our data centers to undersea fiber optic cables and cloud computing are incredibly vulnerable. It has not been the focus in terms of our national security and homeland security, but I think that's rapidly changing and needs to be an investment for the future. I think more broadly, if you think about quantum computing and the impact that that has on data security, when you think about quantum safe passwords, and what we're seeing is both criminal organizations and nation states do what we call harvest now, decrypt later, which is just harvest vast amounts of information, not because they can use it today, but in the hope that in the future with quantum computing, they can decrypt that information. So we need to rethink the critical infrastructure. And as Nadia told me, I think this is put really well, that the adoption of AI is a matter of national security where every electron matters. And I think that's well put.
And by quantum safe and quantum computing, you're talking about the notion that quantum can now break the cryptology that we have all relied on to protect our most important sensitive assets. And quantum safe means that there's a new NIST standard which at least covers the next few years before quantum develops to the point where it can break the technology. Is something like that?
Yes, absolutely. And we already see examples of where nation-state actors have tried to take advantage of vulnerabilities in the information space. I'll give you an example. Prior to the Olympics in March 2024, a hacker group associated with Russia attempted a DDoS attack on several French ministries that were mostly had undergone digital transformation and being executed online. So we think about how our core civil services are coming to everyday citizens through cloud computing and digitalization. And if bad actors can disrupt that for their own goals, then that must be a national security priority, as well as the standards around protecting that data.
Combis, in closing, what are the primary risks that you see for nations and companies that lag in the adoption of these emerging technologies?
Yeah, I mean, another great question. Again, losing out on competitive edge against our adversaries, against your competitors. If you're in the private sector, you always want to have that edge, and technology and innovation will certainly give you that. And then in terms of industries, you know, a lot of these industries are fueled by these technologies. And so nations that are not fast enough to innovate will lose in this sort of race for that sort of supremacy. And then I would say ultimately at the end of the day, it's about the people and talent. So these technologies that are really driving and fueling innovation, you know, if we don't invest in it and those go elsewhere, the talent will go to where those investments are going. So we lose that, again, competitive advantage, the competitive edge that I think is the theme of this conversation and frankly this forum.
Nadia, your final remarks on a vision for AI infrastructure development in the next 5 years. What trends do you see?
Absolutely. So I think if we look to the next 5 years, I like to categorize it as the untidy transition period. I think anyone who takes the mic today and says, I know exactly what this is going to look like in the next 5 years is kind of not being truthful. And so ultimately, we're going to have a lot of trial and error. We're going to see a lot of prospective policies and regulations. Right now, we're in the midst of a nuclear renaissance where we see NextEra, in fact, talking about recommissioning one of its nuclear assets. You have advancements in advanced modular reactors and small modular reactors. But ultimately, when you lift the hood, we see that while this technology is absolutely exciting, the regulation isn't there. And certainly the NIMBYism is very strong. Nobody wants a nuclear power plant in their backyard. So ultimately, to your point earlier around every electron mattering in this space, while we see this nuclear renaissance, while we see this resurgence of natural gas, specifically in this new administration, and we look at grid enhancing technologies that allow for investments and enhancements of our existing transmission and distribution system to meet the moment before us, and the policies and regulations that will absolutely get us there. Again, untidy transition period, solutions driven across the board, and again, we're going to have a lot of solutions that feel right for that moment and absolutely change probably 30 days later.
Thanks so much to our distinguished panel, Nick Hill, Nadia Pabst, Kombis Abdol Rahimi.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'm Dan Korn. Enjoy the rest of the forum. Thank you.